airheads. These people cannot understand why we prefer to eat our dinner at the same hour every day. Where contact with the white man has not changed their habits, they eat whenever they are hungry, at midnight, at 4 in the morning, if they chance to be awake. Even here they can't understand my feelings when dinner is an hour or two late. The cousin of Apakura took away the remnants of a dish of raw fish and brought us a platter heaped with roast breadfruit, taro, yams, and sweet potatoes, served with a picture of Tari, the sea water, and coconut sauce, worthy of a place on any table. It is only the uncivilized white who turns up his nose at native food. The island's vegetables are both wholesome and delicious, and cannot be cooked better than in a Maori oven. A certain amount of European food is necessary to health, but the sallow, provincial white man, who takes a sort of racial pride in living on the contents of tins, need not be surprised that the climate of the islands does not agree with him. It is the same type, usually with no other cause for pride than the fact that he chanced to be born white, whose voice is most frequently heard disclaiming on the subject of color. Everywhere in the islands, of course, the color line exists, a subtle barrier between the races, not to be crossed with impunity. But the better sort of white man is ready to admit that God, who presumably made him, also made the native, and made the Polynesian a rather fine piece of work. Tari had stepped across with eyes open, counting the cost, realizing all that he must relinquish. He is not a man to make such a decision lightly. In his case the step meant severing the last material tie with home, giving up forever the Englishman's dream of white children and an old age in the pleasant English countryside. His children, if children came to him, would have skins tinted by 100 generations of hot sunlight, and look at him with strange dark eyes, liquid and shy, the eyes of an elder race, begotten when the world was young. His old age would be spent on this remote and forgotten bit of land, immensely isolated from the ancestral background to which most men return at last. As the shadows gathered in the evening of his life, there would be long days of reading and reflection, stretched in a steamer chair on this same veranda, while the trade hummed through the palm tops and the sea rumbled softly on the reef. At night, lying wakeful as old men do, in a hush broken only by the murmur of a lonely sea, his thoughts would wander back, a little sadly, as the thoughts of an old man must, along 100 winding paths of memory, through scenes wild and lovely, savage, stern, and gay. Dimly out of the past would appear the faces of men and women, long since dead, and already only vaguely remembered, the companions of his youth, once individually vibrant with the current life, now moldering alike in forgotten graves. They would be a strangely assorted company, Tari's ghosts. Men of all races, scholars, soldiers, sportsmen, skippers of trading vessels, pearl divers of the atolls, nurses of the Red Cross, Englishmen of his own station in life, dark-eyed daughters of the islands with shining hair, and the beauty of sleek wild creatures, bewitching and soulless, half bold and half afraid. Whether for good or ill, wisely or unwisely as the case may be, no man could say that Tari had not lived. I wondered what the verdict would be when in the days to come he cast up the balance of his life. Apakura ceased her plaiting and began to measure off the narrow braid, delicately woven in a pattern of black and white, which would eventually be sewn in spirals to make a hat. My hat, by the way, for it had been promised to me weeks before. 1 fathom, 2 fathoms, 3 fathoms, another 2 fathoms were needed. Work for the odd moments of a month. Some day, in an uncertain future and on a distant island, perhaps the cabin boy of a schooner would step ashore and present me with a box containing this same hat, superbly new, decorated with a gay puggree and lined with satin, bearing my initials in silk. Meanwhile, though I would have given much for a new hat, there was nothing to do but wait. Like other things of native make, a hat cannot be bought with money. The process of manufacture is too laborious to be other than a matter of goodwill. Think of the work that goes into one of these hats. First of all, far off in the mountains, the stalks of the Aeo (Iritis virhidis) must be gathered. These are split, then thoroughly dried, and the two halves scraped thin as paper before being split again into tiny strips of fiber less than a 1/16 of an inch wide. A certain amount of the Aeo, depending on the pattern to be woven, must now be dyed, usually black or in a shade of brown. From a dozen to 20 of these strands, dyed and undyed, are plaited into a flexible braid of which the hat is built up, a task requiring extraordinary patience and skill. Such hats are made only for relatives and close friends. If an unmarried girl gives one to a man, the gift has the same significance as the pair of earrings he would give in return. When a native boy appears with a new and gorgeous hat, the origin of which is veiled in doubt, village gossip hums until the truth is known. Even the classic sewing circle of New England can show no faster or more efficient work than these artless brown women, standing knee-deep in the waters of some dashing stream, prattling, laughing, shattering the reputations of absent sisters as they pound and wring the soapy clothes. When dinner was over, Tari was filling his pipe in the living room. I took up the lamp for a glance at the titles of his shelves of books. Side by side with the Transactions of the Polynesian Society and the modern works of S. Percy Smith and Macmillan Brown, I found Mariner's Tonga, Abraham Forner's account of the Polynesian race, its origin and migration, Lieutenant William Bligh's Voyage of the South Seas for the purpose of conveying the breadfruit tree to the West Indies in His Majesty's ship the Bounty, and the Polynesian Researches of William Ellis. I took down a volume of Ellis, crossed the room to glance over my shoulder at the quaint title page. It was evident that he loved his books. "Tahiti is the most interesting of all islands," he said, as we sat down, "and the best accounts of old Tahiti are those of Bligh and Ellis." Bligh wrote from the standpoint of a worldly man, and though he was unable to speak the language fluently, and stopped only a few months on the island, he has left an extraordinarily vivid and detailed picture of the native life before European religion and trade began their work of change. Ellis was a missionary of the finest sort, broad-minded as religious men go, inspired by the purest of motives, a close and sympathetic observer, and able to appreciate much of the beauty and interest of the old life. If you believe that one branch of mankind is justified in almost forcibly spreading its religion among the other races, and that trade should follow the Bible, you will enjoy every page of Ellis. His point of view concerning temporal matters is summed up in this volume, at the end of a chapter on Hawaii. Here it is. The intercourse with foreigners has taught many of the chiefs to prefer a bedstead to the ground, and a mattress to a mat, to sit on a chair, eat at a table, use a knife and fork, etc. This we think advantageous not only to those who visit them for purposes of commerce, but to the natives themselves, and it increases their wants, and consequently stimulates to industry. There you hear the voice of the mechanical age, which began 100 years ago and ended, I rather fancy, when we fired the last shots of the war. Increase their wants, advertise, speed up production, whatever the implacable cost. Make the ways smooth for the swift wheels of progress. Those are the germs of a disease from which the world may need another century to recover. But the change in these islands was only the insignificant corollary of a greater change throughout the world. Ellis and his kind were no more than the inevitable instruments of a harsh providence. Ellis's book was published in 1831. During the 89 years that have passed since that date, we have seized the islands and profited largely by them, as coaling stations, as naval bases, as sources of valuable raw material, as markets for our surplus manufactured goods. What have we done for the natives in return? Instead of the industrious, piously happy, and increasing communities foreseen by the missionaries as the result of their efforts, one finds a depressed and dying people, robbed of their old beliefs and secretly skeptical of the new. We who conduct our wars in so humane and chivalrous a spirit have taught them to abolish human sacrifice and to stop the savage fighting